Welcome, Salesforce testers, to a Salesforce performance test framework known as LoadRunner VuGen. This workshop will demonstrate the ease of developing a script to test Salesforce connection, login, and logout. This solution uses GUI testing concepts. As I continue to look for Salesforce test solutions that support test automation, I am finding there is no shortage. This time, I am demonstrating how LoadRunner VuGen can easily record and play back a session with Salesforce. I am making some assumptions. I expect that you already know how to install the latest release of LoadRunner. The trial version is sufficient. There's also an associated tool from the vendor site called Network Virtualization, or NV for short. When this is installed, it works with the LoadRunner software. Here's my plan for this tutorial session. The demo session will include, first, launch VuGen, then select HTTP web as the protocol, and record connection, login, and logout processes, then correlate, then execute the script, review the results, and review the NV Insights report. I think you will find that very interesting. And one more communication before the demo. In the description section below is a link to my website and the article written related to this demonstration. I encourage you to read this article for more information. Let's begin the demonstration. Here we are at my desktop, and I happen to have an icon already available for launching Virtual User Generator, or VuGen for short. So here we are. Double-click on that icon and start the launch. It takes a few seconds in order for the launch to occur, so I shorten that process. And here we are with some existing scripts. We're going to start from scratch, so we're going to create, in my case, it'll be Salesforce 2. And let's start with creating a new script. This first option, New Script and Solution. Click there, and we get a pop-up window. It shows us the protocols that are available for creating scripts, and we're looking for web capability. So here we are with web HTTP/HTML. We'll go with that option, and it's going to create this script. I'm going to rename it to Salesforce 2, and it's going to place it in my library. I'll go ahead and leave that as is and click the Create button. That will start the development process. And here we are. We have a blank sheet, so to speak, and we're about ready to do the record. The record will occur when we click on this button here, and we'll be ready. We always need to be ready to enter the URL and whatever else login credentials are necessary. I'm going to stop at this moment and then start up momentarily. Let's begin script development by recording. We click on this button and we begin the record session. We're going to use this URL to get to Salesforce. Start the recording. The browser has been opened. The URL is being processed. can see the progress here with the recording events. Here we are. We're seeing the connection has now been processed, and now we're at the login. Going to select my login ID and type in my password. And click on the login button. Again, notice the recording events are going to increase, at least the number of them. It is processing. We can see this little icon active over here. Takes a few seconds to move forward from the connection to the login process. VuGen has detected that the application has encountered a following error, connect issue. Let's continue. Okay, we have to do this another time. I'm going to leave this as part of my video because of the fact that here was a time I didn't know. That's the nature of working with this particular vendor. They may have maintenance going on at any given time, and this kind of thing is subject to happen. So I'll come back at a later time and continue this particular video. And here we are. I'm going to now, since we're in Salesforce, we're at the home page. I'm now going to go to the view profile and click the log on or log out link. That takes us out of Salesforce. I'm going to click this button here to close this window. And I'm going to stop the record process. And we should go back to generating the code for VuGen. It actually, for the first time, before you actually see the code, the correlation process begins because it saw a need for some correlation, and we may have to run it an additional time to make sure that we have all that is necessary for correlation. And you'll see some variables that are not necessary, and I'll point that out. Here we are. The script has been created. We are now in what is known as the design studio of VuGen, and that's where correlation processing is done, and we're about to go through that, and I'll talk you through what's necessary, what you need to know, and then we will move forward from there. Let's begin reviewing what we have so far. First, let's take a look at this recording report that comes after recording a VuGen script. We see some what could be helpful information regarding performance data, things like how much data did we process, how many requests were made and connections were made, and what URLs were accessed during the script development, and what kind of response codes were seen. Now, let's move on to the script itself. What was developed? If we look here, we'll see that we have something like, let me just scroll all the way down to the bottom of this script, and you'll see all kind of data in the statements. and we created actually 1,788 excuse me, statements for this script. So it's rather large. It went against, we said something like 182 requests. So it's a pretty good size. It's made up of a number of URL requests as well as add cookies both to the header and the body. And if we scroll down a little further, we see yet another type of HTTP request known in LoadRunner as web custom requests as opposed to web URL. And let's see if we see anything else I want to point out. I think that's sufficient. Okay, so that's the script that was created. But what we're concerned about now, before we go any further, is what was correlated. And in order to see that, we go to the Design Studio. So I'm going to click on that button. Now it's going to go through the process that it normally does in the end of the recording. So it's going to scan one more time and provide us with that list. This is a time where we exercise patience to be sure that it processes successfully, and we also will find that it is rewarding. The correlation process that is built into VuGen, that tool has come a long ways in developing the correlation process, and it almost is to the point where there's very little to do. Once it does the correlation, you have all the information you need in order to get that completed and be able to move on to executing the script for testing purposes. So let's exercise a little patience. I'll probably shorten the processing time for the video purposes, but we have to go through that, and you will have to experience that yourself. Here we are. We now are in the Design Studio. You can see on this pop-up window that there are several other things that can be done. We have a list of items that were correlated. They are not yet populated into the script. We only need to populate those that make sense. Usually what I do is look down in this column here where I see names such as browser ID, QCQQ, and then some of the others are going to be named correlation parameter, and they'll add a number to the end of that. And then there's another one, aura, A-U-R-A underscore token. So let's start with, I'm going to select, well, we already have selected the first one. I'm going to click on that again, and we can do correlate. And that's going to apply a process to pick up that data and populate it using this particular variable name. You'll see an example of that in the script. Okay, and that next one, I'm going to do the same thing to that. Click on correlate, and that's done. And then there is this guy. Let's do that. It's correlated. You can see the applied. And let's do this one. Correlate. And you also can see the number of occurrences of that particular value that it saw. And so when we apply, it's going to populate utilizing the variable in all of these instances that it saw. So now we can do, it's an optional thing. I tend to do it. We can do a replay and scan, and that way, if it finds any new ones, we may want to process those. Let's do that. The script is now executing, but it's doing it with the intent of recorrelating the data. And you can see one right here. This was inserted. It's using a WebReg save statement. We're getting close to the end. We've reached the end of the script. The expectation is to see the results once again in the Design Studio. Here we are. The Design Studio is back displaying the information we saw before, and we're ready to look at this information one more time. We still have that applied that. Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't scroll back up. So we have the browser ID. There's two of those. This QCQQ and aura underscore token. And I don't see any others that are needed. Sometimes even those that have a name like this might be needed, but I'm not seeing any that stands out. Once in a while, these usually are date timestamps, and those sometimes can be necessary, but I'm not certain these are. If I were doing processes in business processes inside Salesforce in the script, then these might become critical. So, just want you to point that out. So we should be ready. I should be able to close this. I'll make one more comment, and that is, this is a time where you could take these items that are applied and add rules to the rest of the correlation process, so that anytime you're creating new scripts, it will automatically correlate and apply these particular correlation variables. I'm going to close here. We can see that the script did execute successfully with what we had so far. That's a good sign. And anything else I want to tell you from the replay summary? Not yet. You can go and make further changes to your runtime settings if necessary. I don't think we're going to need to do that this time. And you can go look at the correlation rules that I was talking about. And one back up here. Okay, so far we have this replay summary. We have the recording report that we looked at. And as I said, there may be some useful information there to get started with in regards to performance issues. And then, of course, the script itself. We'll look at that one more time. So we had roughly 1,600 statements, and I'll bring you all the way to the top. And I wanted to scroll back down and see if I could show you once again. There. Here are two WebReg save params that have to do with, this one is browser ID and this one is QCQQ. And there were a couple of others as well. And so they're placed before the URL that it is associated with, where it can pick up using this regular expression to determine where that data is, boundaries, and pick up what's in between the boundaries, and use that data dynamically in the variable that's populated throughout the script wherever it's needed. All right, that's enough on that subject. And the next thing we want to do is we want to see a NV report, and that wasn't showing in the output. When we looked at the summary, typically there would be a link to that, and I didn't see that. So what we need to do is run this again, rerun one more time. We don't need that one. Well, we actually don't need this one as well. Test has started. And once the view summary report displays, we should see the link. If not, I'll have to do a little troubleshoot to be sure what happened. Might be a setting somewhere I arbitrarily changed. Okay, we have the replay summary, and there's the report this time. Here it is. It's creating the NV Insights report. The script passed. We didn't have to do any more with the correlation data than what you saw. Now we have a link that says Open NV Insights report. So that's the last thing we're going to do in this demonstration. The Network Virtualization Insights report can be useful, and it comes out after an execution of a VuGen script as well as a true client script, and it's able to provide you with some useful single user performance information. Let's go to that. The first thing you see is a report that's general and provides you with some transaction status information, network impact information. It takes the script and divides it into the transaction steps, however many you may have, and it provides you with some detail. There are several reports associated with it. Let's click on this particular step, and it starts out with the recommendations. This reminds me that in my performance testing history, if you will, I typically try to report in three areas. One, what observations I might find, but maybe not sure what to do with just at the particular moment, and then what recommendations that I can make that might require some looking into and tuning in response to those recommendations. And then finally, conclusions, where I'm drawing one or more conclusions that I'm certain of what is happening, what will happen, and what needs to be done. And so in this case, this set of reports, one of the main reports is called Optimization Recommendations. So here it's telling the one who's looking at the report some violations that it encountered and what could be done about it and what should be done about it. And it will provide you with a grade associated with that issue. So here are the F's, and if we go forward, let's see if we see some D's, C, and so on. B's, A's. So the grade level is from A to F, as you would normally expect, and it's letting you know what went well and what didn't go so well. Well, there's also several other reports. Not only does it give you a little summary here and a grade summary, but it also, there's what's called an HTTP waterfall report. And here's a graph report that gets down to URL levels, page level, and provide you with data sizing as well as how long that those processes take. So this can be helpful to break down and find out where there might be some bottlenecks in regards to HTTP requests. Then there's the resource analysis report, and it breaks down the data by volume and size again, so that you can see what are the images, the ping files, and other types of image files, as well as JavaScript, as JSON data and CSS data and so on, so that you can find out, again, are there some extra large data files that are being sent to do this process? Well, you can determine by that if there are some issues and things that need to be followed up on. Then there's an errors report. If there are HTTP response code errors, then it's going to provide you with that information in more detail. There's an endpoint latencies. This is really important. This is part of the network analysis that needs to be done. And in this case, it can be done on the single user level and provide you with some good information on what kind of time is it taking to go from one IP address to another. These can be client to server and server to server and so on. Then there's another report called the General Waterfall Report, and it's similar in terms of the endpoint latencies report, giving you similar kind of reporting. Then there's the Summaries Report, which again breaks down information that you might have seen in the Chrome Lighthouse reporting, or you might have seen somewhere else in the LoadRunner analysis reports, where you can determine the client data or client interaction, the connections, transmission, and response wait. Where is all the time being spent? And is it in the right place? And finally, as I said, the recommendations, that one shows up as the first report in the list, and it breaks it down in terms of recommendations. What should be done to improve on the situation. Yet it did pass, but there's still room for improvement. Now, granted, when you're dealing with Salesforce, you have to keep in mind that this information is happening on the network side, but it is happening because of the data resources that are coming from the Salesforce site. And so you may have to work with the vendor to look into some of these so-called violations to determine if there's anything that can be done. And sometimes it's because of the customization that customization is causing some of these kinds of situations that could be dealt with by the client. So this is a good set of information reports to start with and analyze and determine if there are some things that can be done to improve on the situation just at the point of creating or developing the scripts that you're looking to use for a full-scale performance test. I thank you for your time.